The Flyin Lion says,
boys, hell is real.
2023 Supporter Shield champs.
Just give me a reason to drink some Guinness in the morning.
Yeah, just a fan of the sport, you know.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's definitely tougher to be an academy player than it is a pro.
Soccer's my favorite sport now.
The jersey swap was
my car of the week, trivia question of the week. Welcome back, everyone, to the Flyin Lion Podcast. We have a special episode tonight. We want to welcome Kenta back to our newest episode here. We got Kenta and Sam. Kenta, first off, how are you doing tonight?
Doing all right, you know. It's gotten cold. This is on a Monday, so it's like the first cold day we've had in this fall in Cincinnati, which is, I guess, a good thing. I don't love the hot weather, but yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah, I could probably preach to that. I mean, the temperature change, right? It is now in fall mode. We are in fall season for sure. Got a little bit of taste of the rain a little bit today, as well, or at least last night. Maybe tomorrow, but this isn't a weather forecast, so I shouldn't be talking too much about that. But yeah, happy to hop on here. We actually have a lot to talk about. Usually during an international break, you're kind of just looking for things, and a lot of stuff came to us.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about that international break, U.S. men's national team, a little bit about the AFC World Cup qualifying and how that's going as well. We'll talk about end of the season awards for the MLS, some of our picks for FCC awards as well. I know we're kind of jumping the gun. There's one more game left, but we want to hear from Kenta. We want to hear his picks as well. And then second half of the episode, we'll talk a little bit more about that FCC Academy, FCC 2, and then some player rumors possibly going on. And then finally, we'll preview the match for Philly coming up on this Saturday. I do want to just kind of real quickly update Marco Angulo. We still have continued prayers for him. It sounds like he's still in a medically induced coma. Hoping that things are turning towards the positive for him. Sounds, again, like a terrible and scary situation. So continued prayers for him. Going from that, it's hard to transition away from that. I'm sorry, but Kenta, otherwise, I want you to kind of walk us through over the last couple months. What have you been covering or seeing? I guess, you know, that could be AFC World Cup qualifying. Anything you want to tell us? What have you been up to lately?
Yeah, I guess since the last time I was with you guys, I did cover like the MLS All-Star Week, all that stuff that was in Columbus. Been covering USL soccer as well, and I joined a podcast, an Asian football show, which if you would have asked me back then, I would have said I would never be a co-host or a host of a podcast. That's not my thing. And then here we are talking Asian football on I want to say about a monthly-ish basis. We're trying to keep that consistent in terms of uploads, but no, that's been fun. It's been something I've been passionate about and found the right group, and so I've really enjoyed that. But yeah, it's been just a lot of soccer, you know, nonstop.
Can't complain about that.
Oh, for sure.
No, I think it's cool. Like both Sam and I can agree, like just being able to talk about what you're, you know, passionate for, and soccer especially. We can hear it from you every time we talk to you. You definitely have that passion. So I'm glad that you found that niche there. Go check out his podcast as well. But yeah, tell us a little bit in your thoughts about the AFC World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, it's a new format, obviously, with the 26th World Cup having a lot more teams in it. There's more qualification spots for every confederation, and that's no different in Asia. So we're currently in the third round of qualification. Match day 4 is tomorrow at the time of recording this, and it's 6 teams in 3 different groups. So it's 18 total groups there, with the top 2 qualifying automatically in each group. So there's a lot of spots up for grabs here. Being Japanese, I'm pretty happy with how this team's played so far. They haven't conceded a goal, I think, in like 9 qualification matches in a row. They've been on fire. They've 14 goal differential in 3 matches. I mean, we're sitting pretty right now. So not much to complain in my department there, but it's been fun. It's been fun watching them.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. As we kind of transition away from the national team side real quick, because it sparked my interest. The Club World Cup was announced to come to TQL. Some J-League teams might be coming to Cincinnati. What are your thoughts on that? I want to just hear real quickly from you about that.
Oh, yeah, I'm stoked. The one J-League team that's qualified for the Club World Cup is Urawa Red Diamonds. They haven't been playing that well right now. they've some of their key players, because they won it like 2 years ago. I want to say it's been a minute since they won. You could say the same with the Seattle Sounders and CONCACAF. It's been a while since some of these teams that qualify for the Club World Cup actually won their Confederations trophy. But nonetheless, it's going to be super cool to see them in the States wherever they end up. I've been joking with my co-hosts that it'd be super cool to have that team here in Cincinnati. But regardless of where they end up, that should be a really cool opportunity for the league to be able to play some of the top European teams and to test their level of play against the best in the world. So that
Regardless
should be
of
exciting.
where that team goes, would you go to that game?
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, a lot of the teams are in the East Coast, right? Because of I guess I forget what other competition is going on during that time, but
Gold Cup, I
um,
think.
there you go. Yeah, that sounds right. Um, if it's doable, that might be in the cards, but I know there's also some in the West Coast, and that would be significantly more challenging to do. So, and I think it all depends on the circumstance, but I would love to. I would love to.
There.
That's fair. Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I'd be that way. I'm thinking about, just for even the US games and the World Cup, if they're anywhere, like I'm gonna try to find tickets for them. But yeah, as I transition to the US, that was kind of a nice segue there. The US did have a game against Panama. We had two guys that are at least associated with FCC in Miles Robinson, Brandon Vazquez, both unused subs, unfortunately, in this game. Did get a 2-0 win, the first game for Mauricio Pochettino. So very interesting to kind of see how, these guys would fit into his system. What were your guys' initial thoughts for this?
Yeah, I would say initial thoughts. I mean, looked pretty good. Nice to see, Yunus Musa get his first ever international goal in his career. Thought that was pretty cool. Pepe caps off, the 2-0 victory there in the 90th minute. Um, pretty solid, in my opinion. Obviously, it's against a Panama squad that, I mean, it's not the level of the quality that you're going to see when you face the likes of Mexico and Canada, the two, powerhouses that kind of rival us. So this next matchup against Mexico on the 15th here should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, with the Panama side, they've had the US's number last couple
Mhm.
matchups. I know, and I guess if you go back to that, I guess it was the Gold Cup back in summer of last year. That was a penalty kick shootout, and US certainly didn't have their best players available. Maybe their A team, more like their B team in that match. But and then Copa America, that's the stinger, right? So to get that sort of revenge, you see Pochettino's tactics in that back three system. I thought it looked good. Uh, I guess a bunch of the players aren't going to be available for the next match due to injury or fatigue, whatever that might be. So we'll see how that squad rotation looks like in the second match. But, for a first match, I think that's a pretty good performance for Pochettino and the USMNT.
Yeah, I mean, definitely after what we saw in Cincinnati, like that just wasn't anything that we want to, hang our hat on. And then going down to Mexico, like you were mentioning, Sam, like tomorrow, by the time you're listening today, at altitude, for the guys to go down there and play in that hostile environment. I definitely think that Brandon's going to get a look. That was one of my questions for you guys is, are we going to see Robinson? Are we going to see Vasquez? Having him, used to playing in altitude in Monterrey, I think you probably go to him there, being closer to where, he's at now. What about Miles for you guys? Do you guys think that he's going to get a look in this game?
I would say right now, obviously, like something's going on in training where he's just not getting the nod with Poch. But I feel like Kenta said, with the rotation that we're gonna probably see against Mexico, I would imagine he gets a start or a sub appearance. At the likelihood, I know we had talked about, it's a lot more likely for Miles to get a start than it is for Brandon Vasquez. So could see that happening.
Yeah, and I mean, it has to benefit Miles that Cincinnati's tactical approach in their setup is also a back three system. He's accustomed to playing in the center area as well as in this wide outside center back roles. So I think there's the versatility there of him being able to play anywhere in the back line if someone isn't able to start or doesn't have the full 90 in them after playing a couple days ago and playing in altitude. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him start, but also after a shutout, I don't know if he goes out and changes what the back line looks like. But it's also friendly, so we'll see.
True. Is it a friendly against Mexico, though? Is it ever considered a friendly? That's a
I
different
mean,
Yeah, never
conversation.
friendly, never
It's,
friendly.
that's a different
no,
conversation, but I get
yeah.
your point. I definitely get your point. And like you can tell, I mean, he's letting these players go back to their clubs. Like he's looking more on the club side. That's his experience. That's his past. But for FC Cincinnati's sake, like we're in a bad run of form, and like putting this player out on a Tuesday, you have a game on Saturday away from home. It's not obviously great for us if that's the scenario. I don't want him to get hurt. Heaven forbid that happen as well. So it's an interesting situation. We had some other guys that did play, though, international play. I guess one of them, Sam, I want to have you kind of shout us out on that. I think you actually looked it up.
Yeah, so Teenage Debbie also had international appearance. Was just a quick sub appearance, 91st minute. They won 1-0 against Namibia. They played Namibia today. Not sure how they did or if he got to play, but I do know he got that appearance. Unfortunately, Yair didn't make the lineup or the bench at all for Venezuela. However, that was a heck of a game against Argentina, 1-1 draw. And then Venezuela plays Paraguay same day as the U.S. plays Mexico.
Kenna, what do you think about? We were talking about this on a prior episode. Yair is in the second team, obviously, and Kevin Kelsey is Venezuelan and is on the first team. He was just named to the MLS under 22 list. Doesn't get the call up for Venezuela, but Yair gets the call up.
Yeah, it's really something, isn't it? I think that whole Venezuela call up sheet really surprised me when it came out on social media. I had to do a double check. I was like quite shocked by it. But it's good to see that national teams are taking an investment in Next Pro. That's not something I would have ever expected at this point.
Sure.
Within like we're in the third season of MLS Next Pro right now, I think, somewhere around that line.
Mm-hmm.
So for national teams to be looking at the Next Pro area, to be scouting there, to be picking players up, that's a fantastic place. In terms of Kevin Kelsey, sometimes things just don't go your way with national team call-ups, I guess. That's a common occurrence. So I don't think that's anything to be worried about. But that it is a funny note to see a second teamer get called up and not a first teamer.
Kind of related, but not really. It's kind of a little bit of a stretch. But did you recently talk to Nick Marcanic? I want to ask you about that.
I did. I had an interview with them. It was sometime last week. I think it was like Thursday,
So
Wednesday, somewhere around
another player that's obviously killing it this year, for Charleston, lower league player, but going to Spain, I believe, coming up. Is that a player that we're going to see in the future, you think, on an international stage?
Yeah, I had that discussion with them in my interview. Him and his brother have kind of started that process for naturalization with the Philippines national team at the start of the year. Their paperwork's still not complete. He didn't know how far along they were in that process, but that also doesn't surprise me with how long naturalization in Asia takes. So that kind of seems like the direction they're headed towards. Seems like they have a good conversation and communication with the coaching staff over in the Philippines. So I would fully expect that to come whenever they're able to. I just don't know when. Obviously, Zico Bailey, former FC Cincinnati player, is also on that Philippine national team. So there's some former FCC players over in the Philippines if you need a national team to represent in Asia, I guess.
That's like kind of random, but also awesome. Like that just is like a really cool little thing that we have going on there. Former player, but like one player that I kind of wish we would have had back. I mean, how many goals does he have this year? Like 30 something, I think.
Nick is at 20.
I was about to say high 20s, probably 28.
High 20s.
28.
Yeah.
He broke the single season record for USL Championship play in the regular season, and the club record for a single season across all comps. And then I guess he and former NYCFC2 striker MD Myers has the most goals across a single season in USL Championship by two players on the same team. So
Wow.
it's been a very historic season for them. Obviously with him getting that move to Castellon in La Liga 2 is a big one as well for him. So
Yeah.
Talk about development for him. That's been massive.
Sure.
since
Yeah,
arrived
he
in
wasn't
Charleston.
getting it as much here, so I'm happy for him. You talked a little bit about awards. I'm going to transition to the MLS awards. We have several FCC guys that possibly are up for these awards some more likely than others. Lucho for MVP. What's your take on that, Kenta? What are your thoughts?
I was on a podcast yesterday and we were talking about if Messi deserved MVP. I'm personally of the state that he hasn't played enough matches, which opens up the door, right, for other players.
Yeah.
You can quote the record Miami have had when he hasn't played. It's been ridiculously good. You can quote all these things. I won't speak much about him. I'll speak about the other Argentine. I think Lucho still has a great case, especially considering how little the players around him have done. If you look at the numbers, Cuba's had 10 goals, but outside of that, like it's been very lackluster in that attack. So you have a player that's still gotten this team to third in the East. I mean, that's in a very impressive place. He still has the numbers, the goals, this is the goal contribution stats to back it up. I think he still has a very strong case. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. I think he has a great case for him.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I think, especially over Evander, the question for me is Cucho Lucho. That's the big debate, and the way that Columbus has come on at the end of the year, it's making it harder for us. If Lucho comes out and just kills it, against Philly, then it makes that decision even that much tougher. I'm pretty sure the votes have to be locked in after the last game. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's at the end of the regular season, so the postseason run does not kind of factor into that. So that'll be interesting to see. Miles Robinson's also in the mix for Defender of the Year. Did an FCC player go for 2 years in a row for Defender of the Year? That's kind of interesting and hard for me to think about based on what I've seen recently, to be honest. Newcomer of the Year, is Orishano in the mix for that one? I think he definitely has a good say. And then for MLS Best 11 for Lucho and Orishano, those two guys. I mean, how many years in a row now, guys, where we've had multiple players in the Best 11? Barrial, Lucho. I think did Vasquez get in one year? I'm pretty sure as well.
Brenner get in? No?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think Brenner. He was up there with goals that year, but I don't
Yeah.
think he was best 11. So several guys up for awards, which again is just a product over the full season. Obviously, if we look in our short term, memory, not as great, but over the span of a full season, impressive what these guys have done. Kevin Kelsey, though, in a shorter amount of time, getting his name on the MLS under 22 list, was kind of rated, I think, by MLS.com at 15th. Sam, you posed the question. I'm going to ask you, what is his ceiling? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, obviously 15th on the under 22 list. Incredible kind of feat there. I believe FC Cincinnati last year didn't have anybody on the list, and we were kind of up in arms about it last year. So here we are with at least one person on the list. But I believe his ceiling's still high. But I think that his biggest fall is maturity, which, I mean, obviously it's because he's still 20 years old, right? So I think time will tell if, maturity will come, but I definitely think he has the potential to be something great up top. I mean, specifically his hold up play. His hold up play is borderline world class. I mean, he just needs to know what to do with the ball afterwards, right? He's good at controlling it and good at kind of like assessing. Unfortunately, he just likes to be cocky a little, sometimes, and just rocket shot off, when he needs to kind of settle and figure out his surroundings. But definitely think he has the potential to, either get back to, overseas in the European game, or make a name for himself in the US.
Yeah, Kenta, any thoughts on what do you think with Kevin Kelsey?
Yeah, I think he's a raw talent, right? I mean, there's a lot there to like, whether that's just kind of his physicality, his. I think he's had some really good runs in the box at times. I just think it's just the lack of consistency in play. And that's just true with a lot of younger players when you have those highs, but you also have the really low of lows. And just finding that really high consistency in play, that's a really difficult thing to do. And you can only really achieve it by getting consistent playing time. So I guess in that sense, if you're Shakhtar Donetsk, you're happy with the fact that he's getting regular minutes here in Cincinnati for the most part. But I think there's still a lot of room for him to improve, And I think 15th, all things considered on that list. I know that list has really confused me because Kevin Sullivan's on it and he's played like 9 minutes in MLS
Yeah.
play. So
Yeah.
I don't really know how much of that is like performance based and more just projecting into the future. It feels like it's the latter. Which if that's the case, I feel like Kelsey could potentially even be higher, right? With the pedigree that he has and he's shown sparks of. But yeah, I think it's well deserved that he's on that list in any capacity.
No, great shout. I think it's definitely more the projection than anything. And you can see the glimpses of it, but putting it all together. Now, in a lot of ways, I want to like blame certain things on him during the games and this and that, and because a lot of the load we need through the forward play, and with one forward in particular, I don't feel like Gioacchini has done particularly well. Some of the load goes on the other striker, whether that's Kubo, whether that's Kelsey, and we have to remember, like we're all saying, he's young still. So this isn't the polished thing. This is not his finished product. So does that continue with FC Cincinnati or not? That's obviously the question. Sam, you had posed the other question if Dotto should get a shout for that. I think MLS.com did a feature on him and his rise. He's done well. I don't think he's had as many minutes in the second half of the season to warrant that, but he's also not as known coming from kind of like a homegrown situation. You see Kelsey in a big loan transfer, what his valuation is. Maybe that's why he's up there. That's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think based off of what Kenta said, I think there's some people on the list that you could argue should not be on the list just based off of, if you're talking about what they've done this season and shown this season as an under 22. And when you're talking about that, I think Dotto deserves a shout. The things that he's able to do on the ball for his age is ridiculous. He just hasn't been able to finish, right? That's literally like one of the only things that we've been able to look at him and go, man, like just put it in the back of the net. But I did do some digging. And so I looked at the whole list. Okay. Dotto has 34 appearances in all competitions. He's got 1 goal, 3 assists in all comps. He is tied for 4th in most appearances if you include him in that list.
Oh, wow. So he's gotten, a lot of chances then.
Yeah. Which is, I'm like,
shout.
To your point, Kenta, like Kevin Sullivan's played 9 minutes in the in the league. Like, what are we doing here?
Maybe
it's something, isn't it? It really is. 9 minutes. I thought it was an MLS next pro also doing something like that because he's played significant minutes for them. But yeah, it's something.
Yeah. For proven players this year, though, for FCC, end of season awards, if we look at it, we're going to do most improved, comeback player of the year, best youngster. I guess we could throw in like the most valuable player because there could be a little bit of debate with that too. I know I didn't list that one, but we all agreed Kubo's got to be the most involved. I see the ... by Kubo there, Kenta. Is that a like duh, or is that like is it Kubo?
Well, I always have a difficult time understanding the most improved because I see it in two ways, where I see it one as an improved from previous seasons, and then I see it in the other light of improved throughout the season. Right? So
Sure.
I think in the nature of what that award is, it's Yuya Kubo. I mean, coming off of seasons where he's played all over the place and he continues to double-digit goals for the first time in forever. I mean, he's been incredible for the team this year. It has to go to him. But you talk about how Buka came into this year and such a rocky start, considering everything. People are missing Junior Moreno. We haven't heard that name, but we heard that name a lot at the beginning of the season, where it's like Junior was better, Junior was better, Junior was better, and all of a sudden you look now like Buka's firmly in there. No one's questioning it, and his performances are consistent game in and game out. So talk about improvement throughout the season. And his ability to adapt to this league was, I think, phenomenal. So I do have to shout him out, but that's why the ellipses were there.
Great shout. Yeah, no, if you look at the improvement part, Buka, big fan of his and what he's done. You can't replace him at this point for sure. When you talked about like what Kubo is given for the team, I mentioned like debate for most valuable player, and a lot of people will say it's got to be Lucho, right? But is the most valuable for FC Cincinnati and what he's done Kubo? Sorry to put you on the spot for that one. That's a tough question to answer, but I think it's a good kind of thought-provoking one.
Yeah, no, his versatility is literally second to none, right? I mean, it's crazy how much he can do. Um, it's very hard to quantify the value of a player that can play as many positions as he can, and at the level that he's been able to this year. I still think it's Leach. I don't even think he is second, even in a joking matter. I think we're missing Miazga in a way that like it's been so obvious how much he's been missing, and you've also seen it when Lucha's been hurt, right? But this stretch, especially this most recent stretch without the center back consistency, it's been so obvious how big of a hole Miazga's injury is left. So I think he's also an absurdly good shout for MVP in the sense that he's been missed so dearly for this team.
Yeah, I would say for
Preaching
most
it.
improved, you're looking. I mean, obviously we all wrote down Kubo, but you're looking at a guy like you said, Kenta, 10 goals, 1 assist. He has 6 more than his previous combined amount for his FCC career, right? So in that standpoint, he's improving from, past seasons. Played a key role, not off the bench this season. He has been starting 11 consistently. You just don't know where he's going to be, right? Has played every position besides center back and goalkeeper. We're really hoping, he gets those final two, before the regular season here, maybe against Philly. But also he's second on the team in tackles. Like the man is scoring goals and is second on the team in tackles. Like that's extremely impressive. And hopefully he continues that run of form and we can find him a good spot coming into the playoffs here to be able to impact the game.
I find it kind of hilarious that even towards the latter part of the season, we're like, oh, well, when we got all these new players, in the summer window, like Kubo will be a super sub. And Kubo's like, no, I'm too valuable. I have to start. And we're all like, oh, yeah, Kubo's got to start. You're right. So, I mean, it's props to him for earning that. Comeback player of the year, I think I went with Santos just because of what goal comp that he's had for this year. I think 7 goal contributions. He had 8 less minutes than last year. Sam, who'd you have for that one?
Yeah, comeback player of the year for me was Yamil Assad. He has 7 goal comps so far this year, more than his 3 previous seasons combined. And he's really provided a spark to the season during a time when, our back line began falling apart, really. You threw him on the right or the left side, and he started, contributing, playing with Orishano, playing with Acosta, creating that, Argentinian dynamic. So it's been fun to kind of see him reignite his career in the MLS.
Kenta, any shouts for comeback player?
In the light of not repeating other people, I'm also going to put Yuya Kubo in this conversation as well. You talk about a player that you signed as a designated player as a center forward, in I guess before the 2020 season, and he finally gets that goal production that you're expecting out of a DP type. Granted, 10 goals isn't necessarily a DP striker level, but for him to get to that mark is that's comeback worthy for me. That's why I always have that doubt with the most improved because of the similarities potentially between the two awards.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, even looking at like the different players that have contributed, I think it's impressive. The different goal scorers that we've had this year too, like 12 or 13 different ones up there for, most since the 2019 season, I think. We covered a little bit on best youngster. I think we all kind of had our own shouts on if it's Dado or Kelsey. I think those are the 2 main ones. Kenta, we talked about in the prior podcast, I'll ask you this. It was very interesting, kind of the regression in minutes for Malik Pinto. We didn't really see him much. We didn't see some of the other younger guys like Brett Halsey as much as well.
Some of the most sub appearances last year.
Yeah, Malik had the most sub appearances. So I think it's probably just more of a fit type thing than anything. And when you had Kubo that he could slide back or situational, is that what you would attribute it to, you think?
Yeah, it's interesting for a team that's not put together the same lineup once, right?
Sure.
That you're not seeing the minutes from some of your depth pieces. Like that's what you would easily point to, be like these guys are getting more minutes, and it's not the case. I think Pinto's a really interesting one because that he also hasn't played a ton for Next Pro, so I just don't know where those minutes are really going for. You would like to see players that are younger get those developmental minutes, right? And like I think Dado's benefiting with those minutes where he's developed well, and you saw in that last FC Cincinnati 2 game with the hat trick, like you're seeing that development pay dividends when he goes back to next pro, and all of a sudden he's clearly above the level competition there. It's Pinto, I would also say, with like Kip Keller and how he started and where he is at right now, like where that's going with him. Yeah, it's a question I've had with this team, with how they've spread their minutes, not just with the lineup creation, but with also kind of the players that aren't getting any minutes. And I think that's something that should be questioned, because it's not good for their development to not get minutes.
Yeah,
would you say
go ahead.
would you say, like, so looking at it, a guy like Dotto, right? We talk about his impact has kind of been limited a little bit because he hasn't had as many minutes here, past couple games. Do you think that's due to the fact that we have Lucho in front of us, whereas like you see all the other guys on that under 22s list, they're the number one guy in their spot for their position, or going to become that for their club, whereas Dotto has somebody like Lucho in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever think that having a player at the top of their position in a certain league sitting in front of you as a younger player will harm you. I only think that's a benefit to have one of the best that you can complete your training against, right? Because if Lucho's playing as a 10 and you're on the sub team, you're playing against him every game. So that's every training or whatever you might be doing. That's inherently a good thing. You're around him every day. So I would argue that for his development, I think it's probably the best thing that could happen to have a Lucho on the roster. But yeah, it's also gonna take away from your ability to get recognition, because you're gonna get less minutes. You're gonna get less opportunities when you have an MVP frontrunner and the former MVP at your position. You only have one cam. Like that's just how that's gonna work. So it's going to take away from your ability to get minutes at the first team level, but I think it's going to overall help with development. So I don't think it's a negative in any way for a player to have someone of that caliber sitting at the same level on the depth chart.
I think the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see a lot of the same in what we're talking about with how good the FCC2 team is and bringing these guys up to the next level. Like, they're going to have to fight for those minutes. And from a fan base that is so eager to win and to want it now, especially in Lucho's window, like, we're filling these roles with big time players, and then you see maybe less minutes for Stefan Chirilla, for, these other guys. So how do they grow and progress while that's happening? And I really think it honestly is the answer of playing in multiple competitions, Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, you have all of these opportunities for those guys, I think, to benefit from that. And so next year, I think that we will probably capitalize on that more, hopefully, with some of the talent, especially that we do have in our own, club, that we're going to hopefully utilize more, like Philadelphia has. But then we also have a team that is willing to spend. So we haven't seen that before. It's going to be really exciting, in my opinion. I'm going to go to a trivia question here before we go to break. Decision Day is coming up, on Saturday. What is FC Cincinnati's record on Decision Day all time in the MLS? Sam, I'll start with you. This is in 5 games.
I'm gonna go 2-2-1.
Kenta, what about you?
Trying to see if I can remember them. 22 was in DC, and that wasn't the first time in DC, because they drew in DC back in 2019. But that was their only win, because we didn't win last year.
I love how Kenta he analyzes it. I just go for
trying to
it.
remember them as best as possible. I'll go 1-2-2. I think that's right.
All right, well, stay tuned to the end of the episode, and we'll give you the answer. We'll be right back. Hey, FC Cincinnati fans. We are pumped to share our new sponsor, Peak Cocktails.
I'm sipping on the passion fruit margarita, which is so spicy, and it makes me feel like I'm on the beach.
Ooh, that sounds great. I'm drinking the Blood Orange Spritz, which has a great subtle ginger flavor coming from its scientifically formulated recipe to promote exercise recovery, enhance relaxation, and support a better night's sleep.
Ryan, that's exactly why I love them. Their cocktails are designed to fit seamlessly into your health-conscious lifestyle, giving you the enjoyment of a delicious adult drink without the downsides of alcohol.
Guys, next time you are looking for that post-workout drink or an afternoon pick-me-up, grab a Peak Cocktail. Visit them at www.peakcocktails.com and use the code Flyin Lion at checkout to get 20% off your first order. Zach, enjoy your drink. Welcome back, everyone. We are on an international break for FC Cincinnati, but a lot going on around the club. FC Cincinnati 2 has a playoff game that was finally announced. We have an opponent. We're going to be hosting the Crown Legacy on Sunday, October 20th. That's going to be at 7 p.m. That's the conference quarterfinals for them. It's going to be held at NKU. Unfortunately, not TQL, as I was hoping from the last episode. I think if they make it all the way to the Pro Cup, is there an opportunity then for TQL?
I don't know. I mean, it depends if they're the higher seed, right? That's all what it comes down to. But I will say it's obviously always a great atmosphere at NKU. They fill the seats up every single game, especially recently with the run of form that FCC2 has been on, and the fact that we're hosting a playoff game, right? So it's pretty huge from that standpoint. But once again, last episode, Kenta, we had talked about this playoff platform, new model for MLS Next Pro. What are your thoughts on the kind of pick your opponent?
It puts so much pressure on the teams that are in the top four, doesn't it? Because you're essentially, unless you're the 14th picking, you're calling your opponent out. That's what's happening, right? Regardless if it's seeding or whatever it might be, you're calling your opponent out. That's despicable. That's crazy. It's I can't imagine what goes through that conversation with the coaches where it's like, all right, are we just picking the lowest seeded team? Are we picking the team that we've had the best history against? Like that, that is it's very funny. You just imagine that in other sports, like in the NFL playoffs.
Well, so Ryan had pitched should the MLS do this? Yeah.
Yeah, just because, look at FC Cincinnati in our late run of form, but we're third in the East, imagine that situation.
Yeah, MLS. Imagine each team had a representative in the NBA draft, and they all came into one room, and then they're pointing at people. They're like, you.
It's very dramatic.
You're the one.
Yeah. Lights are dim.
And it's like a standoff, you see, and then you go off, and then you play your matches in a best of 3 format. That would be the entertainment that MLS needs, to get more eyes on the league. So
be a good way
Messi
for
stand next to Lucho. And
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I want to see a Messi v Lucho, calling him out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, this situation is interesting. I think honestly for the pick, your opponent thing, I'm pretty sure it was based on the seeding. They pick those people. I don't think they went outside of that, the numbered, the way that they had it listed. The schedule and how we look at it. So the quarterfinals for them will be the 18th through the 20th, semifinals 25th through the 27th. The conference finals will be November 1st through the 3rd, and then the next Pro Cup, November 8th through the 10th. Honestly, I'm not going to hide the fact that I never thought I'd be talking about this, but we have a really, really good 2 team. So go out and support these guys. It sounds like from all I'm hearing, the tickets are close to being sold out already. So try to get your hands on those if you can. Kent, are you going to try to make it for that game?
That's this Sunday, right? Maybe. I don't know what my weekend plans are yet, so we'll see. We'll see what that looks like before I commit to anything. But there's a chance. There's always a chance.
Smart. Yeah.
Playoff soccer, no matter what level it's at. But talking about our academy team, young Garys continue to represent at the international level. We had a goalkeeper, Zach Critter, was called up for the U15 U.S. Men's Youth National Team. Upcoming camp they have from the 13th through the 19th. We had another forward, U18, Jalen Lester, so for the Jamaican Youth National Camp as well. Several young guys that are just getting shouts at every single level. Hopefully we can retain these guys and progress them through. Sam, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, like you said, I think we've talked about Jalen before. He's been called into the Jamaican Youth National Team. I want to say maybe this past summer he was over there. But yeah, nice to see, like you had said, everybody on all levels kind of being called up. It's also nice to see we had a U16 forward was selected as MLS Next Player of the Month for September. Scored in all 6 of his U16 matches and has 11 goals this season, second most in MLS Next play at that age group. So we're killing it. Academy is doing well. The fall is looking good for FCC in all levels. Hopefully, the first team can kind of maybe look at the young guys, go, that inspires me. I remember when I was young, and maybe do something like that.
It's been impressive. I'll just have to say that. I mean, we've talked about it more this year than any other year. They're finally getting everything together, and really kind of bringing it all through every single rank of the academy, through the MLS Next Pro as well. I think it comes down to just having an identity and how we want to establish this club. Like we saw the pyramids with Jeff Birding, and how he wanted to build it from the ground up. And we're finally seeing that, which is really cool to see.
Kind of the fruits of our labors, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so we'll see where that goes from there. Kenta, I want to rely on you on this one because we saw this rumor that was going on online about Luca Orishano. There was a journalist that had reported about Vasco da Gama. I guess the investment group for the team was filing for bankruptcy. So part of Orellano's salary, where does that come from? Will Cincinnati pick up this obligation to buy? It's the first time I'm hearing that there is an obligation and not an option. Have you heard anything about this or any thoughts about what we're seeing?
Yeah, I think when I was logging onto this podcast, I had seen somewhere that they had filed for bankruptcy officially.
Okay.
I don't know the legitimacy of that claim. We'll assume that's true for the moment. For Velez and their whole financial situation, whatever that might look like. I hadn't initially heard when we had gotten that signed loan for Luca Orellano that had an obligation to buy. So I'm not sure what that looks like. I was under assumption that it was an option. But if it's an obligation from the start, FC Cincinnati doesn't really have a choice, and you just move on and you pay money. So
Right.
I'm not really sure. I know Barriel also has that option to buy, so I assumed it was a two-way kind of a situation that both would be triggered. But yeah, I guess it's something to keep an eye on. But I think if you're FC Cincinnati, you're going to do everything you can to keep him around, considering how kind of season he's had and how he's fit into the team. So regardless of what their Vasco's financial situation would be, I would assume he's on the roster next year.
Yeah, I would imagine too. And like Sam and I have been talking about it for, I think like a few months now, is like, why haven't we just come out and said like, we're triggering this or we're doing it, like put no doubt about it. I think maybe it's just assumed at this point. But then you see that it's more of an obligation than an option. And it's very interesting. So in these loan situations, it's been probably the last 2 years we've seen more of them. Obviously Barrial out, Orishano in. But I think it has to be triggered, I would imagine. Sam, don't you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't be too mad about this obligation. It's kind of like, oh no, we get to keep him, and we just got to pay some money. That's okay. That's fine. We'll take 10 goals, 7 assists every season from our left wing back. No problem.
Yeah, MLS best 11 for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other big rumor that probably is not a rumor, but Paul Pogba is apparently potentially coming to the US. There was more interest recently, I think, about LAFC looking into him. I know his suspension got like reduced to 18 months, I believe, from 4 years. Sam, I loved your tweet. If you want to tell everyone what you had put out about his interest in Cincinnati and coming to FC.
Well, I mean, there's always room for Twitter to troll, right? When Mbappe didn't know where he was going to go, we were on it. When De Bruyne didn't know where he was going to go, or Saudi was up there, we were on it, right? Pogba's coming to Ohio. I mean, this is real, fake, real news that is most likely false. But Pogba's been talking to Ohio teams. There's only 2 teams in Ohio, so one of us, one of them's got to be us, right? So decided to put out some funny content. Him in the jersey, obviously, was 75th anniversary of Skyline too, so that's why he's coming and is interested. So that probably is all true, that he's heard of Skyline and wants to come because of that. But My goodness, I was seeing funny videos too of him and like Weston McKennie in the midfield with Lucho as well. I don't know if you guys had seen that video.
That's an all-time midfield right there. Kent is in like disbelief.
Yeah, I always crack up with these rumors, regardless of how true or not true they are. I won't go into much detail because, frankly, I haven't given it a minute of my thought. When I
No,
saw Paul
yeah.
Pogba with MLS with like 15 logos on our graphic, I'm like, that's enough for me. I'm not gonna deal with this. Other people can. Uh, yeah, it would be a fun fit, if you got that prime Pogba sitting in that deep like midfield role and just dishing out 40, 50-yard assists. That would be fun to watch, I think, at TQL. But yeah, it's always funny, funny season.
The $100 million player at one point. I had to go back and like remember the days when, Man United came calling. And if you see the rumors now for the MLS for him, I mean, we obviously are laughing at it, but like like you said, if it's prime Paul Pogba, it's like, wow, this is a big time player. But you never know what you're going to get. I mean, we saw Drew play, in Cincinnati and did decent, but like this season he hasn't really done much for LA.
Well, I was gonna say, what is up with all these French talents, possibly wanting to come to the MLS? You got Giroud, you got Lloris, you got, Griezmann possibly, like, and now Pogba. Come on.
It's the food, Sam. It's the skyline. We do have a game this Saturday, guys. We're gonna be playing Philadelphia Union in Decision Day. What do you think the best lineup for this game is, Sam? I have some thoughts for it. Do we get our starting lineup started now for the playoff run, or do we say, hey, let's rotate a little bit? It's got to be going the best foot forward, right?
You would think. You would think. However, Pat's shown us that the best consistency this season is inconsistency. So, I believe we get, another new lineup and he leans into it, right? He sees everybody talking about every single match. They have a different lineup. Well, guess what? I'm gonna put another one out. So I think he'll do that because we're playing the Union as well, so it's double the funny because they're big rivals of ours, and I think the best lineup here. I wouldn't be surprised honestly if Hadebe gets a start again. Based off of the last match he did decent, but obviously. I really don't think it's all going to come up to who's up top, right? And we've seen the Nico Kelsey, we've seen Kubo Kelsey, like all these different options. Wouldn't be surprised if you saw like a Santos start either. Like all these like weird forward position players that you would throw up there. I would imagine Pat is probably going to throw one of them out there. But if I had to say one duo, I'd probably go Nico Kelsey.
Kenta, what are your thoughts? What's the play here?
You've got to start your best team. You have to. You're not in great form as a team. You've had an international break, so maybe rest the players that went on international break are coming back and having these long flights over back in Cincinnati. But you have to. You got to be able to pick up form in some way. You have a CCC spot, I guess, potentially on the line. I don't know. I haven't looked into the details of what a win would do, what a draw would do. But if that's the case, you have something to play for, which wasn't the case in terms of just the straight up table. I mean, there's nothing to play for in terms of playoff standings, right? So, yeah, you gotta get in, gotta go into the playoffs hot. You gotta find a way to reverse what's been going on recently because 3 wins, 3 losses in a row is not the way. You don't want to make that four going into the playoffs. It's not good for team morale. It's not good for the fan base morale. It's not good for really anything. So, do that while making history by I don't know if it's officially, but being the first MLS team to not replay a lineup in the regular season across all competitions. That would be nice. It'd be a shame if Pat Noonan decided to reuse a lineup on the last day of the regular season on decision day. That would be a shame. It would put a stake into everything Carter Chapley's done to go through all the lineups to make sure that they were not replicated. It would be a shame because that's such a fun writing point to be like, this season they didn't use a single,
Look how great they did with all these
That's really
different
good.
lineups. Yeah.
Yeah.
You, Yakubo, you are the center back for this game.
Honestly, yeah, just put him at like right center
Make it
back and just
happen.
hope for the best, Yeah.
Let's just do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Just add to
Yeah,
the list
I
of
think, Sam,
positions to
did you make
select.
the point Philly has to win to reach the playoffs?
Yeah. So Philly right now is currently, I think, 11th, I want to say, in the table. They're right outside that playoff picture and need a couple of those teams in front of them to drop some points. And they need this win. This is a must win for Philly to be able to reach the playoffs. So they're going to be fighting. Earlier this season was a barn burner, 4-3. Lucho was the hero in that game. Came to the 10th minute of extra time to get it done. So obviously Philly's going to come, and they're going to come for us, especially being at home.
What a better way for Pat to his old team, denying them
Knock them
from
out.
getting into the playoffs. Yeah. Honestly would be huge because Philly's been playing hot lately and they I think knocked us out of Leagues Cup too. So, getting a huge result would be great for that, great for morale like we talked about, and then clinching that Champions Cup spot, Kenta. A lot of talk online about it today. A win, I believe, would guarantee us based on the win differential with some of the other teams. So getting into that competition is awesome, if that's the case, and big for playing all these other teams across the region too. I want to ask you, Kenta, about your playoff predictions now that we've talked about this game and overall, where are we thinking? What are we doing moving forward in the playoffs? I'm hopeful, but you never know.
I was asked this yesterday. I was on the LA Galaxy podcast, and they were asking me about what I thought about Cincinnati, and I had to think about it. I don't think my expectations are high, because how could they be with how
Right.
this team's played as of late and the key injuries that you've suffered throughout the season and um, everything that's there. But this team still has kind of the recipe for success. They have that key player that can take over a game and win you a game and a crucial one. They've shown that they can be one of the better defensive teams in the league, where they can outlast and take out offensive teams that are really good in attack, whether that's Messi and Co, whether that's Cucho and Columbus, right? And then they can go into pens and make that happen as a win as well in the best of three series or whatever that looks like. So I think they have what it takes to. We just haven't seen it as of late, so I don't know how optimistic I am in that sense. Also, the matchups that they could face, Charlotte's been so good at home, so in a best of three series, you got to find a way to beat them at TQL once. One of the better defensive teams with, in my eyes, the goalkeeper of the year in Christian Kalina. That's a tough matchup. Whether that ends up being Red Bulls if they sneak up, that would be once again the Red Bulls. In a best of three series, we know the rivalry that's there. That'll be an intense series as well. So, or if NYCFC falls, that's another one. So, who've been very good this year and playing in that what Yankee Stadium, City Field, that's already a mess in itself, and that's a huge disadvantage for a team like Cincinnati who don't play that regularly in those dimensions. So, three tough matchups in the playoffs, regardless of who they end up matching up against after decision day. But yeah, the hope is that they can make some noise and cause some upsets.
We went on a run earlier in the year and won 7 games in a row. So, I mean, we'd have to do something special again and bring it all together. We'll give our predictions, I think, after this next game is what I want to say. I just wanted to hear yours. I can kind of simplify my, I guess, question for you. Will Roman Celentano get his first PK save ever?
Well, he's had one.
He's had one? Okay, we were trying to find
Yeah.
one. He's had one.
Back in was it his first season in 22
Okay.
at RSL at Real Salt Lake? If you go back, he saved
Okay.
the PK. So that would have been, I think, his first professional PK save too. So maybe there's he saved the PK in Next Pro before he came up to the first team. He saved his first MLS PK, and then I don't know if he's saved one since. So, PKs are tough.
They are. Yeah, they really are. I hear Leroux is really good at PK, so that'd be something interesting if it does go to that in playoffs. Like, will we keep with Roman? Will we not? That's a talk for a different day. It'll be interesting to see. I'm going to give you guys our trivia question and answer here before we go. Again, the question was, what is FC Cincinnati's record on decision day all time in the MLS? And that was through 5 games. Sam, your record was 2-2-1, I believe.
Yep.
Kenta, you said 1-2-2, and you nailed it. Congrats. You won this
Let's
week.
go.
Our guest pays attention, Sam, and knows what he's
You
talking
put
about.
mine in reverse and it's right.
But yeah, the only win was against DC in DC 2022 to get into the playoffs and won 5-2. I think Brenner had a hat trick that day. So hopefully we can get our second win. It would mean more than, what we're on paper initially seeing, and just for everything that we talked about. So that would be huge. Kenta, thanks again for joining us tonight. You're always welcome to come back and chat some soccer with us, but thanks again for joining.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be on. Thanks for the invite. Always appreciate getting it. So
Absolutely. Sam, thanks again, and we will see you guys next week.